Tribe Builders. This is Tanya Rooney, and I'm here today with Alyssa Strom, who is a gal who lives in Minnesota. She is, I don't know, in my opinion, she's a little powerhouse, which is really fucking fun. I met her a few years ago, and honestly, it's so interesting when you get far enough into real estate, people just meld into your community, and you don't even know where the heck they came from. And Alyssa's kind of one of those people because I heard about her quite a few times. But it just so happened there were two Alyssas in the market that, and they both had a last name that started with S. So I got them confused. And I thought one day I was meeting one, but I was meeting the other. And eventually I actually met Alyssa Strom because she actually has a group in the Twin Cities that's it's like a Facebook group, honestly, and then it has a real estate component though around it, and then a little community that goes with it, which she's going to talk about today. But I'm pretty sure that's where I actually met you, and now we've worked together a little bit. I've spoken at a couple of her events, and we just do awesome things. So I'm really excited for people to hear the kind of stuff that she's got going on because she is a really awesome investor in the Twin Cities that has used her community for really fucking great things. So without further ado, Alyssa, tell us about tell us a little bit about you.
Yeah, well, thank you. That's very sweet. Yeah, I don't know where we met. I was thinking about it and I was like, gosh, maybe Glenn's like little meetup. Who knows? Right? It's a small world. Yeah. And the other Alyssa and I are good friends. So it's funny because everybody's like, which Alyssa? I'm like, that makes it easy in the real estate business. So I can kind of go over how I got into the space and just do as quick of an overview about my life as possible when it comes to real estate. So I went to school for entrepreneurship. I always knew I wanted to do something for myself. I didn't know what that looked like. First job was women's economic development work and women's business development stuff, which I absolutely loved. Thought I would do that forever. That was like in the heart of the '08 recession that I was working there. Lots of turnover and kind of chaos. And I remember driving to work and being like, I can't work a 9 to 5 for the rest of my life. Mainly it became like about time off. I was like, I can't have 10 days off a year. This is unsustainable. I just didn't know how I'd get out of it, right? So when the nonprofit stuff sort of ended, I went and worked at a corporate job, which I knew was just like a little bit of a stopping point for whatever was next. And at that time, I actually started a meetup called Escape the 9 to 5. I was just like, I need to find other people that are thinking about this. I had owned a fourplex that I house hacked with my husband, but it was only because I wanted to live for free, which you could still do at the time. I don't want to set anybody up for unrealistic expectations, but so we lived there for free. We just wanted to travel more, but to get to travel more, I needed to figure out how to leave my day job. And this was pre-COVID. So now it's there's remote work everywhere. That wasn't really the case then. And so my first meetup I ever did was Escape the 9 to 5. We had 30 people show up, which was incredible. One of which, actually Kurt mentioned his name on his interview, Andy Root. So hello to Andy Root. He was an investor. He had the life that I wanted. I was like, I want to be this guy. I talked to other people there. There was a Bitcoin guy. I probably wouldn't even be here right now if I had listened to what his advice was back in 2014, but didn't do that. So Andy actually added me on Facebook. And I thought, okay, we only talked for a brief time. He's a really cool dude. And a couple months later, he posted a real estate related job. So he had a portfolio of mixed use stuff and residential. And I was like, this is kind of interesting. I hate my day job. I want to do something different. I want it to be real estate related. And so I just replied and I said, hey, I'd be interested in talking to you more about this. We got together. I didn't really actually have any experience that he was looking for, but I had my fourplex. I kind of knew the space a little bit. I had read Rich Dad, Poor Dad. We connected on, vibes really, truly. And he's like, yeah, I think you could figure this out. And I'm like, yeah, sure, I probably can. And so his property management, he was doing some solar installation stuff on some of his buildings at the time. He was kind of at the time thinking about bigger projects. So I stayed on for a couple years through a few different things that he was up to. So I really learned the business from him. And then he was kind of transitioning back to California and doing some other stuff. So I went and worked for Glenn Williams, who we both know, doing wholesaling, flipping stuff and kind of learned that side of the business. And then ended up finally in as a realtor, which I never thought I would be. My whole family makes fun of me. They're like, never thought that would be you, as like your face on a bus bench. I'm like, no, I swear I'm a cool realtor. I'm chill. I'm like not trying to sell you anything. I don't think maybe that's part of my problem. And so I just, I started working with Scott and Drew Hofler over at Side by Side. And that was a lot of multifamily stuff. So getting people into house hacking, getting people into investment properties. And it just sort of has grown from there into, different communities and different people and different stuff. And it's been a really fun journey. And honestly, like you mentioned, it's really the people you get to meet is the highlight. The real estate's awesome too, but it's really it's just a community of a lot of like-minded people I've found. So
yeah, I feel that same way about real estate. And I feel like that's why I stay in it sometimes, is because the people are just like, they're so fun, and there's just different things that you learn, and everybody has a different way of doing stuff in real estate. And that's the cool part. It doesn't really feel like there's a wrong way or a right way. I mean, there's a legal and illegal way, but otherwise, like most of the stuff, like how you get to the end point of maybe selling a house or having a rental, like it can be so many different paths. So it's super cool.
Absolutely. Yeah. And that's what's cool about it, is like there's a million ways to do it. It makes it overwhelming when you start, but the best part is like you can shift and pivot, and you have to.
Yeah, absolutely. So tell us about your community building, because the reason that I chose Alyssa is because she has a couple of really good groups, and that I know a lot of people in the Twin Cities market just because of these random groups that she has. So can you tell us, like, what kind of groups you have, and like, I don't know, how that accidentally probably started, because I feel like most of it is accidental.
So one of them it's been called the Millennial Investor Group. It was started by a lender and another agent here years ago as kind of like a 5-part series. My colleague and friend Scott started, or kind of took it over when he got a little burnt out. I stepped in around COVID. The Facebook community grew beyond kind of what we were intending, because we liked the in-person element of meetups, especially. So it's at, like, generally speaking, a real estate project around the Twin Cities on the third Tuesday of every month. We have done that for the last 4 to 5 years. We're doing some rebranding now, so I can talk about that later. But and the other one is the Minneapolis chapter of Invest Her. So me and 3 amazing other ladies sort of co-host and organize that. Because there's 3 other women involved, it feels like the easiest event and meetup thing I've ever done. Like when one of us is busy, another one steps in, and it's just been really awesome building that community for and this isn't a bad thing, just most meetups in real estate tend to be dudes. And Invest Her has had just such it's gotten me re-energized about real estate investing, met more people, developed deeper connections. It's been really lovely the last year to be involved with that. And I kind of sometimes just say yes to stuff. And I think that's why I end up like organizing or hosting things, because I'm like, I guess I can do it. Right. Like, so here I am. You'd be surprised how few people say yes. When I tried to get rid of my other Escape the 9-to-5 meetup, I put it out there. You can take over meetups if the host goes away. Nobody did. Right. And I was like, oh, that's a bummer. I would still attend. I'm doing something different now. But yeah, people are, nobody took it over, and I get it. It's work. So it's free labor.
Yeah. Generally Facebook groups or free things are a little bit harder than people would ever imagine. And less people want to step up to do stuff like that than you would actually think.
It's very true. Yeah. So if you have an idea, run with it, see what happens.
See how much work you might be able to put into it.
Yeah.
So, okay. So tell us about your rebranding. First, actually, tell us how, what is that? What do each of those groups look like? Like, how many people are either in them? Are they mostly email lists? Are they just a Facebook group? The meetups, how many people attend? That kind of stuff.
Great question. So both show up on Meetup, right? So that's kind of where we started. The Facebook group, when we couldn't meet in person, we kind of more people started kind of engaging there. So it's a pretty robust community, a lot of engagement. And we're mindful of really come to it from a lens of being helpful and adding value. And so we probably get at our events, maybe 20 to 30 people, depending. Sometimes we've had like 50, sometimes we've had 15, but 30-ish is around every monthly event that we do at different projects. And it depends on the speaker and kind of the project. The biggest issue we've had with the Facebook group is Facebook really controls a lot of that. So it controls what people see in the group. So even though I'm in like an admin, if I post something, that doesn't necessarily mean my post is going to get any reach. So we've had a lot of challenges around sort of engaging people and inviting them to the events. I can only invite 500, and then I have to hand select people. We have like 4,300 members. So it's just like impossible, right? Like to really, truly like connect with people in that way. They might not see it, right? It's just Facebook. They're prioritizing everything else. If you post a link and want them to go elsewhere, they're going to like push that down and like the algorithm. Like it's been interesting to watch. So we've realized kind of the mistake of doing it on Facebook, but the ease of doing it on Facebook is everybody's already there, generally speaking. I'm not a huge fan of Facebook, but I show up there because people show up there. And then InvestHer, we run that through Meetup. That's a requirement of the larger InvestHer community. And then we just have an email list. And that has, I think, helped engagement and participation at events is like, we can remind people about that. So it's been some good learning lessons on how to sort of reach people, how to remind them that you exist and your event's going on. But it's always stressful. You like host something, you ask a speaker to come, they open up their project and you're like, hopefully more than 3 people show up. I've had events like that 2 people have showed up at, right? But I actually think, and I like going to Kurt's for the same reason, is like, you can learn just as much from those 2 people as you can from 50. So it's good to like, I think the speaker element kind of takes away some of the networking, but we're trying to help people learn about what's working and what's not in the local real estate community.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. It's funny. I'm going to host my first meetup in like a week or 2 in the Twin Cities. And it's for short-term rental people. And I just put in the thing. I'm just like, I'm going to try this for between now and the end of the year. It's going to be, the first Tuesday of every month. We're going to do Taco Tuesdays and we're going to talk about short-term rentals. And I even put in it, if 3 people show up, I'll come. Like if 3 people essentially say that they're going to come, like that'll be a great conversation because I don't care if it's 15, 20, 30, 40. I really just want 3 or 5 people because that's kind of a good sweet spot anyways. And if more show up, cool. That just means we're going to have more conversations about short-term rentals, but you never know what you're going to
Right. You know, I honestly, like, I love this story. I would just post about it on Instagram, but like a girl I met at a meetup, I did like a rent. So after Escape the 9 to 5, I did a rental property meetup or some name like that. And she was like living in Dubai at the time. Shout out to Rachel. She's amazing. And she came to the meetup and we really connected. She had 1 duplex. She was thinking of moving back in like the next year. We stayed in touch. I just was at her bachelorette party, right? It was like just sort of serendipitous that you meet these people that you're like become lifelong friends. And I'm like, I had this conversation multiple times last week. That is the best part about real estate. Really, truly, like, I love that, right? It's been, so I'm like random, right? And again, was that well attended? I don't know. There was maybe 10 people there, but I met somebody that I will be a long time friend.
Yeah, absolutely. And I feel like this a question, or it's kind of a complaint that I hear from a lot of people is like making friends as an adult is really hard. And, a lot of times people have kids and it's like, oh, well, I'm friends with their parents. About it. But making my own friends is hard. Well, they might not want to go join a gym where you could potentially meet friends if you're in classes together. But real estate is a great spot to find friends. I mean, a lot of my adult friends are real estate people. Oh my God, I have so many real estate friends at this point. I have places I can stay all over the place and be like, hey, I miss you because they're my actual friends. So I think that's a good tip too, that it's like stuff like that. Like these people can be there for you in a different way. And yes, we're building it around like our businesses, but it's still a community. Like it still counts. If something terrible happens to you and your husband, the likelihood is we're part of the group that's going to help lift you guys up when something bad happens. Not saying anything is going to, but still, you're like real life friends.
Yeah, no, and I think it's true, right? Is like, people, I remember when I was like in, a job, be like, oh, networking, that sounds horrible. And then I think you have to find the thing you're like interested in, right? Because then you're like, oh my God, I have that same issue or whatever that looks like, right? I'm like, networking for purely networking sake feels kind of yucky, but networking for like, I also like this thing is amazing.
Yeah, yeah, most of
Right,
the time.
not always,
I
but
actually I actually think that's one of the reasons that real estate networking is kind of fun, like having like doing meetups and things like that, is because these people all like they're looking for something similar. There's some people that aren't actually looking for that, and maybe they're just kind of trying to get out of the house and they really don't want to take any action on whatever
yeah,
that goal is. But if you generally find the people that really do want to do the same thing, they want to like get free of a 9 to 5. Well, there's people out there that are like that, and you just go
totally.
find them. And then you guys talk about it all the time, like
Yeah,
I talk about short
yeah,
term rentals every single day with people. And it's because I like short term rentals. So,
yeah,
what better way to find other humans that know what you're going through and then building your tribe around what that thing is, like what your interest is? It's
totally. And like what you're working on, right? And yeah, I think you find that like whatever your lifestyle is, right, is like I think real estate investing specifically draws a certain type of person and like
yes.
energy, right? And so not, there's a range and not all of them are amazing, but like most people you meet, you're like, oh yeah, we could totally connect on a deeper level because
Yeah.
that's sort of our view of life and how we want it to look,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, we could talk for 6 hours or 10 hours
Yeah,
about real estate, and then we talk about traveling, and then we come back to real estate, and then we talk about travel again, and then food.
right. Yeah, honestly,
The
yes.
same person. Yeah, that feels like what I talk about with most of my real estate friends
Yeah.
is food,
My
travel, and
husband's joke always is, what time are you going to be home? And I was like, I don't know, probably like, things wrap up at like 8. He goes, so 10? And I'm like, yeah, probably 10. You're right. Like I'll talk a lot. I'll chit chat. I'll run into somebody else. We'll talk about how the rentals are going or how life's going. So yeah, I'm like, it ends technically at 8:30. And I generally don't eat dinner. So
I have totally been one of those people that has talked. Like I always stay at the end of meetings. Honestly, half the time I probably don't. I just want to be there on the front end when there's a little bit of
yeah,
networking, and then usually on the back end, I want to stay with whoever like probably put that on because now I want to ask real questions. I want
yeah.
to talk about other real estate, which is really funny. Do you feel like you've always had an easy time talking to people and networking this way? Do you feel like you make friends easily?
Um, I interestingly enough, like I had a lot of guy friends growing up, so I always felt like, okay, it's like very, it's men. Very. I
Mhm.
asked my husband, what did you guys talk about? He's like,
Surface
stuff.
level. Yep. Mhm.
Yeah. Okay. How's that so and so? Good.
Nope.
And so I think there was that like element of like, oh, that's like easy, right? And I
Mhm.
just know these people. And then the minute sort of I started developing like deeper female friendships, it made it all easier, right? I think it was like, oh, I actually am very like I have a harder time with small talk than I do like going deep, right?
Yeah.
Like I'm generally speaking like, oh, tell me more about that. Tell me more about this. Like I'm a curious person by nature. But yeah, I'm like when I did the MBTI or whatever it is, Myers-Briggs.
Okay. Yeah.
And I was like on the introvert extrovert line. So I think
Really.
I'm generally speaking, I can like fake it for a long time. I do need to get re-energized by like sitting at
Being by
home
yourself.
and a book. But I love
Yeah.
it, right? It's like, again, I'm more energized by it because I've picked the right things to like participate in that like are natural to me to talk about. But yeah, if I went to like a group where didn't know anybody, I am a little bit more reserved. So that might come across in one way or the other, but I'm generally a little bit more shy if I don't know anybody in a space. So
So you could say like you're a borderline introvert, and
yeah, a little bit. Yeah.
but you created a group that has a few thousand people in it. You now get up and speak monthly in front of a group, welcoming people to an on-site event, like at least once a month, if not twice a month. You have found it semi easy to make friends by networking and things like that. Is that all pretty true?
Yeah, yeah, right. And I think that is like, people are like, oh, I'm an extreme introvert. I'm like, I think if you're really, really extreme introvert, it probably is difficult, and maybe a group setting like isn't maybe the best option. But I see people like having side conversations all the time, right? As long as you're open to be like, hey, I'm so and so, and here's what I'm trying to do. And again, not every group is like this, but I feel like the ones that I'm at, like people sort of start making connections in, one-on-one. And then they're like,
Yeah.
oh, if I see you at the next, like, you just want to be comfortable always attending because you don't know who you'll meet. Worst case scenario, you go there, don't talk to anybody and just leave. But you might talk to the person next to you, right? So if I go to a big conference, that's like my, yuck. Because I'm like, I'm gonna have to meet how do you just like naturally meet people? But I'm like, I'll just talk to the person next to me, right? And then maybe they know somebody. I was at a Tom Ferry conference. I knew nobody. And I was like in Vegas, like solo. And I'm like, this might be like the saddest place to be, like by yourself. Everybody's like having fun. And I'm like, I don't even know like how to engage. Because, when people sort of, it's that cliquishness that I think people are afraid of. But generally speaking, most people, if you approach them and are like, hey, I'm, Alyssa, nice to meet you, they're going to like let you into their little circle. It doesn't mean you have to stay there forever. It's a little bit easier than I guess I ever thought it was to sort of make connections and break the ice in that sense.
Yeah, I just I guess I asked those questions because I wanted to point out a lot of people like use that excuse that I'm an introvert, I don't like going places, I don't like doing these things. But if you just like if your goal was only to go to an event and just talk to one person or talk to two people, like I actually make my friends that are introverts, I'm like, talk to three people, that's it. You can even do it right away and then you can leave as soon as you're done. If that's what you want, then do that. But it's just like kind of building that muscle of just go talk to one person. You don't have to make a difference, you don't have to do anything, you don't even have to make a best friend. But if you're looking for that, if you need more people, if you want people in your circle to help, with your business, I mean, you would need to go talk to other human beings. Like if you need a lender because you're going to do real estate soon, or you need a real estate agent, well, then your goal could be to go to a meetup and meet one of them, one of each. And like things like that, they're just like little tiny bites that it's not like it has to be this big daunting thing. You don't have to talk to 15 people because 15 people are there. That's not a thing for, especially introverted people. Just talk to one person. And sometimes you can even start that on a Facebook group. Have you been impressed with anything, or what has been the biggest surprise? Like I keep going back to Millennial Investor Facebook group because that's the reason that I know you. I know that's probably has a big deal with it. Have you been to, like, what kinds of things have surprised you that have come out of that group that you wouldn't have expected when you entered to help Scott?
Yeah, I mean, I would say just continuing to expand your network, right, is a really great way. It's like, I think if you're new to something or you want to like get into something, being the person in charge of asking for speakers or finding people to present, like, expands your network, right? Especially like right away, you might not get like the biggest names to show up, but over time it's like, oh, I would love, like, we don't even ask people sort of ask us now. Right. And so it's like, I'd love to be in front of it. Like, what do you, and I'm like, that's really cool. And we do seek people out and we love interesting projects. So if you got one, let us know. But yeah, I think the getting in front of people, and then that just sort of naturally, like, I've got this really interesting thing. Would you like to be a part of it? That sort of naturally builds a network. And I would say, people are really great about sharing resources, whether it's a plumber or a, HVAC person that they really like. That's probably a majority of posts is like helping locally on random projects or stuff. I think it's just, I mean, I just am always impressed by like how much people are willing to help if you ask. Like, I think in the Midwest, right? Like, I'll do it myself. I've got it figured out. I'm like, I had to like make a phone call last week and I was like, oh, I know somebody that does private money. And I have learned a lot from you. And like, you got to ask, right? You don't know. You can't, it's not always the answer. I'm like, yeah. I'm like, psych myself up. Yeah, I got that. And I called and it was like, yeah, absolutely. Send me what you got. I'm like, oh, it's that easy. Right. And now I've built a relationship and trust over time, but I think it's like shocking how quickly you can build that through building relationships in whatever industry or space that you're in, right? Is like, then people like, oh, I know, so-and-so and they trust so-and-so, right? So like even just being in there and not necessarily having that direct one-on-one connection can still open doors. It's like, what's that like? 6 to 7 degrees of Kevin. What's that like from like the 90s? The 7 degrees of Kevin, or whatever. Like it's totally true. It's like, oh, so-and-so, no, so-and-so, and so-and-so. And like that opens this door. And you're like, oh, it really does work that way. And when you see it in action, you're like, huh, that's like super cool. Like I knew it. I inherently knew that was true. I just didn't know it would happen like that.
It would work for you.
It would work for me. Right? It would work for me. Like,
I love it. So the people that are listening, so about like a couple of weeks ago, I spoke at Investor Minnesota and we talked to, it was a panel about creative financing within real
Yep.
estate. And I am a big cheerleader for private money and people literally like raising money to do projects. Like just because you don't have any money doesn't mean you can't start that business, doesn't mean that you can't do that flip. It doesn't mean you can't buy real estate, like all that stuff. You can partner. There's a lot of ways to do things. So I like to get up in front of anybody that'll ever listen to me. I will always tell people this kind of stuff is that, well, you would just have to ask. Like, and that's what she's talking about. Like, she made the phone call and like, it's so uncomfortable at first. Like, but everything we do, everything in life is uncomfortable the first time you do it. Like, we didn't learn how to walk like just overnight. Like, we took a step or shimmied a little bit and then fell down and then fell down and fell down and fell down. But we did that for like a week. And then we finally started walking. So it's the same thing with real estate, the same thing with business, friendships, relationships. Like, I mean, everything in life can really just be boiled down to that same, learning how to walk analogy because you have to try it. And of course it's uncomfortable. Like it just when you're a baby, you just don't realize it's uncomfortable because you don't even know better. But as adults, we learn that things are uncomfortable and then we're just like, no, I don't want to do that.
Yeah. I go to a community ed class twice a year, like something I've never done before to like work that muscle because it is a muscle, right? It's like the more you, it's like why people do like cold plunge or whatever, like, which isn't my thing, but I get it, right? It's like, just to put yourself in an uncomfortable situation. And so I would go and I'd be like, this is great. And the one, I still think about this and like, my sister still makes fun of me for this. So I went to a watercolor class because I'm like, this is a really cool art. I'm not like very artistic. I'm like, I'm going to learn just the basics. Well, I show up. And it's not really a class. It's this like 80-year-old Russian lady teaching. And it's really just people that have been to the class before, just like like an hour so they can like do their art. And I'm like, I'm there to learn the basics of watercolor. And the first class, everybody's like, hold up their work. And I'm like, I don't even know how much water to use. Like, I was like, I'm not even hold up my, like, show everybody. I was like, this is horrible. Like, and all of it was bad, like really, truly, like horrific. I didn't learn anything about watercolor, but I still think of it as like, it didn't hurt me, right? Like, I'll never see any of those people again. I'm sure they were like, they're like giving me like a nice clap. I'm like, I really appreciate that. Like, that is so sweet. Like, this is horrible. But like, I didn't learn anything. I was like, I didn't even learn watercolor. Now I have to show my work. And I'm like, yeah. And I'm like, never again. But I that was like a way for me when I was trying to figure out like what I wanted to do with my life was like, all right, keep working that muscle of just giving it a try because everything you do then is a version of that, right? It's like the next real estate project you do is going to be, stress you in a way that you haven't done. Like you're going to always be learning. And if you're okay with that, like feeling like inadequate and unsure, and that's like something I really had to work on because I like to have all the answers before I jump into something, but you can't get ahead quick enough with that sort of mindset. And so I've been trying to work on that as like, try it. Like I know enough, right? I know enough to do this. I'm confident enough in myself. It's like that, imposter syndrome, which we all have elements of it, right? It's like, I can do this. Like I have to give myself pep talks. I can make this phone call. I can do this flip. I'm like, can I? And then, and I have this lovely community of women like, yeah, you can totally do it. You're going to be awesome. And I'm like, you're right. I got it.
I got this. No, that's awesome. And I completely agree with all of that, that it's like, you just have to try to get ahead. Like there's no other way. We all just do it. But this kind of brings me into like, I mean, you just touched on it a little bit, the imposter syndrome. And I like to talk about self-limiting beliefs because I like to share. The reason I love talking about this is I want people to know that everybody has them. Literally, no one on this planet doesn't have some kind of voice in their head. It's just how well they're good at stamping it down. Yeah. So tell me if you have limiting beliefs and if you've got like, how do you get over them?
Yeah. I think I emailed you this when you sent me the question, which has been good and a good reframe. Self-limiting belief, like what am I getting in the way of for myself, right? For future success. Like, and it's a lot of stuff, right? And I think it depends. And every year it's a little bit different. This year, I would say it is that element of like going it alone in real estate, right? I always had this idea. I'm like, I will buy 4 fourplexes, I will pay them off, and I will have this like passive real estate business my favorite word of real estate, passive. I'll have this passive real estate business that I have 100% control and ownership over. And, you know, again, I think when I got into it, I really don't love the property management side of things. I'm a little too nice, right? So it's really hard for me to have like, you know, clear enough boundaries, and it is a business. And I always try and remind myself and other people of that, like it is a business. It has to be run that way. And so I was like, okay, well, that won't work. And then I'm like, well, how am I ever going to save up enough money to take down a deal with 20%, right? And if I wanted to go bigger so I can hire a property manager, like, so I just kind of got stuck in this place of like, I've got to do it all. I've got to save it all. I have to like take 100% ownership. And like, it's such a self-limiting belief. And like, I've been working on a few projects lately where I'm like, this is too easy. Like, this can't be how easy this is. Like, I've wasted years thinking like, I'll just keep saving money. Well, life happens, right? Money comes in and money goes. And I'm like, how, like, can you ever save $250,000? Is like, you don't. The answer is you do not do it. You have other investors and people that are really excited about your project that don't want to do the work and just want to invest. And there's a lot of those people out there. And literally till this year for me to be like, light bulb, like, people aren't doing these deals independently. Some, you know, a handful of people might.
Absolutely.
Partners. The only way to move forward and grow in real estate is to bring in a partner on something, right? Or multiple partners. Like, I was like, it literally was this year that I was like, what have I been doing? Like, money for what exactly? Like, because it's like that money it just doesn't sit there. Like, life isn't that easy, right? Where it's like nothing goes wrong in a given year. But yeah, I'm like, well, like, dang it. I'm like, but I learned it now, right? Like, I can look back and regret like feeling like inadequate and not knowing enough, or, you know, feeling confident enough. And now I'm like, had just enough, like do, and I think a mentor might do and detach, right? Like, do it and just like, don't think too hard about it. Enough about it. Like, you know, like I always like, I'm like 80% there, but I'm always trying to get to that 99%. Right. I'm like, no, Alyssa, you don't need the 20. Just go with the 80, go with it. So it's been a good lesson, really. And you've helped with that, really, with the private money stuff, like make the call. Ask.
I'm so happy about that, because truly this is all real life stuff. Like, we all make things so much harder than they need to be. And we just like don't have to. It's so lovely when all of a sudden you're like, oh, you mean I have to do it this way? And I could have help. And like, I don't know, we can always go further, faster with other people. And it doesn't mean you have to give away your whole entire business. It doesn't mean you have to give away the whole farm. Like, there are people out there that will, I mean, they'll seriously invest in you without like, with only certain strings attached. Like, you know, they might not even need profits. They might just want an interest rate. Like, there's just so many ways to do things that people are just, you know, like, well, I need to do it. It's all on my shoulders and it's my bank account and all of this stuff. And you still need to have some degree of that attitude, especially when you're using money in any situation.
Like, if more professional for sure.
Yeah. Like, if you're using a bank's money, you need to be smart about it, but like, still assuming that you don't have to do anything solo. Like, you can just learn from somebody else that's already done it. Like, I love that about some of my friends. Like, when I talk to them and they're talking about businesses, they're just like, how do I learn from somebody else? Like, they want to take this person that's in that industry, they want to take their 10 years of experience and they want to apply it to their own business so that it only takes them 3 years to do it, or 4 years, or 1 year. And that's kind of the dream. I like that's what I love about real estate masterminds and things like that, is like, I don't have to worry about, like, I still have to worry about all kinds of things, but I could utilize somebody else's lessons. Like, I don't necessarily have to get sued for $1 million. I could use the lessons from 3 of my friends that have gotten sued because of A, B, and C within real estate. And it doesn't mean you're, you know, doing super bad business. It's just sometimes like that's the luck, or sometimes somebody gets into an accident. But learning from them and realizing, oh, these are the things, like these are the 3 things that they are telling me. Like, you know, we need to make sure we're insured in an appropriate way. And these are the levels of insurance that you need so that you're covering, so that you don't have to, you know, like owe somebody millions of dollars. Or like, you know, making sure that your taxes are done a very specific way, so that, because the government doesn't care if you don't do your taxes right. That's not their problem. It's your problem as the business owner. So making sure those things are in place so that you don't go to prison for tax evasion or whatever the heck the story is. It's learning from other people's mistakes, and then just knowing that hopefully their mistakes make you just uncomfortable enough that you don't want to repeat them. Like
Right.
that is very important. Like
Yeah.
I just get so cringy when I listen to a podcast or hear somebody talk about a situation that happened that you're just like, oh God, I don't want that to happen to me. And I don't want to be that person. And it's almost like, cool. I think by just like having that gross reaction to whatever happened to them, it's
Sure.
like, oh, good. I think I'll be a little bit more diligent, or I'll be diligent
Yeah.
in these ways because I'm learning from their mistakes and
Yeah.
stuff like that. So
Yeah, or to bring in the right partners ahead of time, right? It's like I think
yeah,
it's like I think there's this mindset of like I'll do it for super cheap. And it's like I think a lot of mistakes get made with the mindset of like how do I save or spend the least amount of money. And I think that's again, it just comes down to like you're going to still make mistakes, right? You're going to learn from somebody hopefully, and you're going to understand like here's the big stuff, right? Like I do not want to go to prison. I want to, pay the IRS, like, but a lot of small things will go wrong. But I think you need to take that step, right? I think people are like, well, how do I learn the most? And again, I struggle with this too, but I'm like, you can't learn the most until you do it. You can't. There's just like a book, Bigger Pockets, other people's experiences will never translate 100% to like all of their learning will never translate till you're like in it and you're like, what did I learn about that
again? Well, we even think about like some of these high-powered people, like maybe not doctors, but I think about lawyers and I think about the people that have to work for lawyers. So they have staff on hand to actually look up rules. They look up the precedents that are sent and wherever they are, because there's literally no way they could ever know all those things. They have to look it up every time. Like there's not somebody is going to kind of remember, oh yeah, what about that one thing? They're never going to remember everything. And like, I mean, I've sucked at a flip before. I spent way too much money, and I didn't know that was going to happen, but I had to have that lesson. Like, there's no way I could always know that I'm supposed to look at certain spots in a floor joist to ensure that it's okay. But that's why I bring in partners that know things like that, or I get a lesson that halfway through that I'm like, oh, I have to replace every floor joist in this house. And that's my lesson. Like, that's my $8,000 lesson that, if I didn't make money on the house, like, that's my problem. But the learning thing, it's like, I never would have guessed that I would have to learn that. Like, I never would have guessed that either I needed to pick up a book to find out this very specific thing, that I needed to hire this specific person to always look at every single house, or that, that like I wouldn't have guessed that, oh yeah, that's what's going to happen. Like if I can guess the next 10 mistakes I'm going to make, oh my fuck, my life would be so different. And I would be running away from everything because I'd probably be like, I don't want to make that mistake. Like there's a reason that we don't have a crystal ball, that we can't see what's in the future, because there's no way you're going to do anything.
Yeah, because like
run it away.
No, and you won't. And I think that's like super useful, right? Is like, that's part of the growth, right? Part of the fun and excitement about life is like, if it was super easy, it'd be a little uneventful, right? You don't want it like, I've had really traumatic stuff happen in my life. I'm not wishing that on anybody, but a little bit of hard isn't like the worst thing that happened to you, right? And I think that's part of the story. That's what, like, when you go to a real estate thing and you've been around real estate people, like, that's what you laugh about. You're like, oh man, remember that thing I did wrong completely? Remember like that, that risk I took didn't pay off, like, and that's what everybody laughs about. Like, oh yeah, I've got this, crazy story. I'm like, those are the fun things if you can reframe it, right? And it's like it becomes more of a lesson. Now, you don't want to go into anything blind, and you do want to know something about it or find a mentor, but even in real estate, like I never thought being a realtor, like every deal would be so different. Like, oh, that job's so easy. I'm like, it is honestly incredibly complicated, because now I need to understand like this county's like septic requirements, right? I'm like, like sewer lines. I'm like, how many different problems can be wrong with the sewer line? It turns out it's a lot. And like, there's just like, you're like, huh, like just the craziest things happen. You're like, well, you couldn't ever teach anybody that in class, right? Like the bar's lowish, right? Everybody always says that. But I'm like, the experience takes a lot of lessons, right? And a lot of deals, and being like, I never thought I'd have to check for X. Like that's but
I love real estate stories, because it's always like, I get a text message at least once or twice a month. You guys wouldn't believe.
Exactly.
And it's just, you fill in the blank with so many different lessons about all kinds of different things that you just, like, you don't think of. You would never think that you have to fill in the blank. Like, I'm not, like, we're in the Midwest. I've never bought anything out west. And, but I don't think about scorpions, but I have a friend who thinks about scorpions all the time. But I have another friend that's from down south, and he, the problems that they're having with like the frost happening, maybe in Georgia, where it typically wouldn't happen. And I'm over here like, wait a minute, our pipes freeze. Like, that's totally a thing in the Midwest, but we don't have scorpions. So there's all these little things, and you don't, like, you never know the kinds of crazy stuff that could get cooked up in a real estate deal. And just, it's such a they're good lessons. They're good lessons to have because it's just knowing that, well, you wouldn't know that stuff like this is going to happen, but it keeps it light. It keeps it like, oh, okay, new challenge. We're just going to pivot. We're going to try this out. And you have to be really versatile. You really don't have a choice. Like, problem solving is, if you're not good at problem solving, real estate's probably not a spot for you. Business ownership's not a spot for you if you're not.
Right. And I think that's
all we do.
Super important, right? It's like, because it's a good thing to invest in some cases, real estate isn't for everybody. Right. I think that's where, I'm always trying to be mindful of, like, that's not for everybody. And that's okay. Like, you could be like, I'm not really a risk taker. I don't like problem solving. I want things to be very black and white. It's a very hard industry to, like, fit into that box. Right. It's just not like, it's kind of like every week I'm like, okay, I guess, like, I'll figure this out, I suppose. Like, and it sounds like that I'm like bad. I'm like, oh, you'd be shocked. Like, the craziest things happen. And people are like, tell those stories. And I'm like, always mindful too of, like, privacy and, like, people. But I'm like, there are some stories where I'm like, nobody would believe this if you told them. Right. And
if you typed it out, they'd be like, you're lying.
Exactly. My husband's like, when he's trying to follow along, he's not a real estate guy. He's like, what? And I'm like, forget it. I'm like, I'll just next time I get together with my real estate friends will understand this.
They're going to love it.
Yeah. They're going to, this one's going to, like, kill at the next thing. I mean, I'm going to love this one. Yeah.
It's totally true. And actually, you just touched on one of the things the reason that I tell everyone you need to build a tribe, and tribe builders is so important, is because exactly what you just said. You're telling somebody that's non-real estate, or maybe you tell your spouse, whatever it is, and they're just like, what? That's either they don't believe you, or they don't know how to commiserate with you because they don't know about the emotions that go with a lot of the stuff that we're talking about. Because it's truly like you're tied to emotions throughout all of this stuff. And some people are super logical, so maybe they don't have those problems, but you still have how the hell do I deal with this? Like, the first time you had, these 3 different situations with a sewer, you don't know how to deal with that. Like, I know a real estate agent at one of her first few projects, deals. They got sued, and she didn't know how to deal with being sued. Like, she had to go to people to help. Like, how do I counter? Like, how do I deal with this?
Right.
Like, it was things that, like, she would never have known that was her oversight that she was supposed to sign off on, or whatever it is. But there's no possible way for people to, like, I don't think in any way she was being negligent. So there's no possible way for somebody to know all these rules. Like, there's so many rules, there's so many things, and it's not like we're going in blind all the time, but it's just having people to commiserate with and to even ask. Like, there's a reason that real estate agents have to have a broker over them, is because that broker needs to have gone through at least something to realize, oh, this is how we navigate this. This is how we navigate this. And brokers, thankfully, they have to be around for at least like 3 years or something. Don't they have to have Yeah, something like that. And hopefully it's even longer that they choose to, wait until they open a brokerage. Yeah. But it's supposed to be, you roll up to these people because you need a director of somebody to tell you what the fuck is going on when shit hits the fan.
Yeah. And I think it's like, that's the answer, is like, it's a lot of times you kind of know, right? You're like, okay, I can figure this out. But just hearing totally normal, right? Like, here's how same thing happened to me, right? It's just like the reassurance that you're like not alone. And I think that's like why a community is so important, right? Is like, no matter what it is, like, you just want to feel like you're not alone going through something. Now, it might literally, there's times like people be like, this crazy thing happened. And you're like, that might be a first, right? Like, that could be like, that's crazy. I've never heard that. But again, it's not even, you're not even asking them to solve your problem. You're just like oh my gosh, can you believe this? And sometimes it's, yeah, I can. And sometimes it's like, that's crazy. And like, wow, like fun, right? Like, wow, like that's a
We
fun
tell
one
each
to
other
solve.
stories.
Who knew?
Yeah. Or we tell each other stories. Like after, I mean, you mentioned Kurt. Kurt probably is our
Yeah.
episode number 9. And he, like you guys have a connection, a really strong connection that I totally didn't know that you had a connection with Andy too.
Yeah. Yeah.
And, but you think about that, it's like, I love telling people that story about, this situation that he had with another investor, like signing over rights to a property because they liked him so much. Like these kinds of things, you're just like, I just want to tell that story too, because it's so
Cool. Yeah.
cool. You
Yeah.
just never know what you're going to get.
Yeah.
I love that. So can you tell me, in real estate, in life, whatever it is, do you feel like you have a really, really big win and a really, really big miss?
I'll go back to this. The win is always going to be community, right? And the relationships I've built, because I know I will do more with my sphere, right, if you will, as a nice, easy, like I'll continue to do stuff in real estate with people I've already met and people I've yet to meet. And I think just adult friendships, like I never thought of it that way. Minnesota is notoriously difficult if you're new to the state. I'm from Wisconsin, so I moved very far across the border. But like it's hard to meet people, and I'm like, my life is so much more full from it. I have a career I really like. My goal ultimately is to like invest more over time and sort of get out of the day-to-day buy sell, because it's just taken away some freedom. That's what I was originally seeking when I got into real estate, was freedom and flexibility. And so that's what I'm working back towards. But like a career, friends, experiences, like it's been amazing, right? It's been challenging and amazing. A big loss. I really, truly, like, this is not real estate related. I lost my mom 5 years ago. And I think like that is just like such a shift for me. I've been like a big shift in the sense of like nothing can compare to that sort of loss, right? Things can go wrong and things can be bad, but it's nothing like that, right? And I think that gives me so much perspective that there's like, yeah, there's little things that have gone wrong or things I could have done better, regrets I have about not buying real estate in Northeast in 2015. But, like, lesson learned. I thought things were expensive. I was running the bigger pockets calculators. I was like, this doesn't make sense. So $100,000 of equity later, good for me. Great. Lovely, smart decision making. But it's nothing, right? It's nothing compared to like really, truly like life or death. And I think, I think of her all the time. I miss her every day. And everything else is like minor, right? I think I can, the silver lining of it all is that it puts a lot into perspective real quickly. So, yeah, but yeah.
Yeah, no, absolutely. No, it's a really good, it's a good response of like how you have to learn. And like, I don't know, I feel like, more years of the earth, like help with stuff like that. Like we go through, and everybody goes through different lessons at different times of their life. Yeah. And they're supposed to be there at a different time of their life. So like seeing stuff like that sometimes we need to get knocked on our ass with some kind of perspective so that we can be like, oh, that's why that matters.
I shouldn't be complaining. And again, there's moments where you're just going to like have a bad week and be like, oh, I'm just like feeling bad for myself. Right. And totally normal. Right. And I just, thankfully I have enough perspective to like pull me out of that a little bit quicker, of being like, okay, Alyssa, like stop feeling bad for yourself and like move along. Right. Like, you're good. It's fine. Nobody died. Like it'll be okay. Like,
I always love getting to communicate with you, because this kind of attitude is just like it's really great for me to be around, because sometimes I feel like some things are the end of the world, and I'm better at like grasping that too and being like, it doesn't ruin my whole week or something. Maybe it'll ruin a few hours, hopefully only a day or less. But then it's coming around to you and you're just like, yeah, in the big scheme of things, it doesn't fucking matter. And sometimes you have to I have people strategically in my circle that are like that I need their logical sense to like shake me out of my emotional rage or whatever the hell you want to call it.
And I mean, it's sort of like being in traffic, right? It's like we all sort of lose control sometimes of like just minor things. They're like, this is enraging, I'm gonna like lose my mind. And like, no, again, normal. Like that's not like, it's not like I live my husband says I have oppositional defiance disorder because I never listen to anything he says. I think I do like 50% of the time, but like, it's just funny because he's like, people are like, oh, this is so calm. And like, and everybody says that. And then like him and my sister will be like, what? Like this chick is crazy. And I'm like, I guess you just sort of let your guard down and have your moments with the people you trust the most. And then you can go out into the world and like be a normal person. So,
you deal with a lot more crazy. Your threshold is a lot higher than it is.
Yeah. So it's perspective's helpful. It always is. It's like, but it's okay to feel bad for yourself. Like I don't like, there's days where I'm like, I just feel bad for myself and I'm going to like be okay today feeling bad about this situation or myself or whatever. And then I'm like, I'll give myself the day. I'll wallow in my sorrows and I like just try my best to keep moving on. Right.
I feel like a lot of people need someone like you in their corner to just to remind you, because sometimes it's okay to have bad days. It is okay to have.
Yeah.
And I feel like we show up different on different days. Like 100% looks different on different days. And, you know, once you realize that, it's so much easier to.
Right? Yeah. And like, or even like the idea of busyness, right? It's like, I have to be very like mindful of like, don't just try and jam all these things in, like, and don't feel guilty when I take a night off or like don't respond to text immediately, right? Like I'm like, that's probably where I struggled more, is like being on and being productive and getting stuff done and working towards this and working towards my goals. And I'm like, okay, like chill, right? Like go have fun. Like
marathon, not a sprint.
Be like responding to email till 8:00 at night. And I'm like, well, no, you know, and I'm like, so I'm really, really working on that. Boundaries.
I have to, you know, sometimes I have to preface emails with like, hey, I'm sending this late. I'm not expecting an answer. Like, I don't actually care when you answer. It's just I work at really weird hours because of the freedom that I get to have with real estate. Yeah. So, you know, if I'm working at 11 p.m., it's because literally I want to work at 11 p.m. I don't want to work during the day or during the morning. Maybe because I happen to do something fun that day. So it's just, these boundaries, it's interesting because somebody doesn't have to necessarily match the same crazy that I have. They can just, you know, match that. Just as long as you answer, that would be great.
Yeah. And that's a really good point and like good differentiator of like, sometimes I do actually prefer, like I did something fun during the day, which is why I like real estate, is like I have a lot of flexibility and, you know, so it might be a Tuesday, I'm going to go do something fun and then I'll work in the evening. And then I'm like, you know, schedule send on Google so people don't think I like have no life, you know, at all. But in the morning when it sends, I'll probably be sleeping. So like I am a night owl, like I tend to work later anyway. And, but yeah, being more mindful of like time blocking, which I don't time block it. Let's be real. But like, if I took 4 hours, I'll eventually find those 4 hours later in the week at some point to get my stuff done.
Yeah, absolutely. When I have clients, when I had a corporate job, I did schedule send, because it's like if I like right before a vacation, like I'm working till 2 or 3 in the morning because I want to knock this out and I'm never going to think about it for at least a week. And my director would get those emails maybe at 2 or 3 a.m., but everybody else would like, I would be very mindful about that too, that it's like, and then I have a new person that works with me and she works late at night as well. Yeah. So we might be texting at 11 o'clock and it just surprises me every time because I'm like, oh, you don't have to respond to this, or, you know, we're doing some back and forth. And it's like, it's just because we both have weird hours. Like it kind of works. It's really fun to find those random people in your community though, that you're like, oh, you can match me. This is interesting.
Yes, right.
Expectations aren't the same. Like, you know, again, I don't expect somebody to text me back at 10 o'clock at night. But if I already know that person works really late, like, I mean, my accountant actually works late. I've had conversations with my accountant at 9 p.m. because it was easier because he couldn't put me in during the day.
During the day.
I'm working again. You know, I'm working again. Would you like to chat? I'm like, all right, it's cool. I'm cool with that.
Right. Yeah. So, that's a good, it's like not necessarily like evening or morning. It's like what works for you. What does your job require? Right. Because everybody's different.
You get a 9 to 5. It's just
you got to show up. I just sort of like occasionally during the week, like wander off and go do something fun. And like, I'm like, oh, I should probably work today.
Yeah. And actually that brings me to a question I do want to ask, like, what do you do to check out? What does look fun for you? Like anytime.
Yeah. Good question. My husband and I like live on a little lake, so we try and like go out on the boat in the evenings. lot of friends and family stuff. Like a lot of time is just spent with other people and enjoying other people's company. And I spend a ton of time on the Reddit travel, planning like my next trip. That's where I have to get better because I really love travel and like to see the world. So I know that's like such a boring and travel. Huh? Everybody likes, well, not everybody, but most people like to travel. But like I got into real estate because I wanted more location freedom. Obviously, real estate, like as a realtor, doesn't really allow that. So how do I get back to that and bring more into more of that back into my life? And so, I mean, my husband and I do leave in the winter every year for a month or two, which we've carved out and made work. It's just sort of sprinkling in some other trips like internationally that is on my list for like the next few years is like, how do I do more of that? And how do I just commit to it? Right. Because again, it's like, I don't think I could probably take 2 weeks off. But isn't that the reason I got into real estate in the first place was I was complaining about only having 10 days vacation. Now, if I'm like, every year I have to remind myself, what am I doing it for? Right. Like, what's the goals of my life beyond just real estate? And so I'm like, well, if I was complaining about 10 days and now I'm like, 10 days. I don't think I could take 10 days off.
Isn't it crazy how entrepreneurship really screws with that? It's like, oh, cool, I have all these freedoms, and you do have freedoms. Like if you want to go and have a beer on a Tuesday and then literally drink beer the rest of the afternoon and not work the rest of the day, you can totally do that. Yeah. But when it comes to bigger trips, it's like, crap, like how am I going to do this? Like, and a realtor showing houses, that is different. A real estate investor who has properties that are sitting back there, you can kind of work around stuff like that. But it is interesting that we get into entrepreneurship because we want freedom, but then we tie ourselves to our business pretty intensely. Like I do. I mean,
same. I just said to someone, I'm like, that 9 to 5 kind of sounds nice.
I know. I bet you I say that once or twice a week.
Maybe I was off about escaping it. Maybe, but again, it's like it was never going to work for me. Probably because, as my husband says, I can't listen to anybody. But yeah, I'm like, I did have to laugh. I'm like, it's full circle, right? I'm like,
you swap things for other things. And I actually am in that too, that I'm like, damn it, that was a really good wage. What was I thinking? At least I didn't have to work that hard for it. But I also think of working for people. I'm really not that great at working for people anymore. Like I am just kind of a brat about a lot of things. Like it's just like, no, it's because I want to. That's like, and because I said so, I get to say that to whoever I want because it's my business. But when I work with people, I'm like, oh crap, I probably can't just stomp my feet and be a brat whenever I want. My husband can deal with it, but he's contractually obligated to. So
right.
Oh man.
The most
I love this. Well, this is an awesome chat. Can you tell me, like, where can people find you? Where's the easiest way for people to get a hold of you and to follow you?
So on Instagram, this is Alyssa Strom. I always say like that was the only option available for my name. It's not like I'm very like Midwestern and like not show. I'm like, I'm not like this is, but yeah, this is Alyssa Strom is my IG handle. And then, Alyssa at Fulton Realty. And then we did just launch this sort of relaunch Millennials as Rebel Collective. So real estate business learning. We are sort of getting people signed up for that, small classes, masterminds, hopefully like an online platform and educational community to come. So that's rebelcollective.com. That's the thing I'm working on currently. But this is Alyssa Strom is the easiest way to find me.
Okay, so if people want to find you, they should go online. You're good on Instagram. And then anybody that's in the Minneapolis, St. Paul market, definitely reach out to Rebel Collective. You can still, did you guys rebrand on the Facebook yet? Or is it still MFIG?
We did change the name on Facebook. That group will remain the same. We'll still do free monthly events. Investors the second Thursday of every month. So the additional sort of add-on is just small group classes. So really to do deep dives into real estate investing in a challenging market since it's, it's different than it was.
Yeah, well, this is awesome. Like if anybody's in the Minneapolis and St. Paul market, like this is the way that you're going to find more stuff about real estate. I feel like the people that I've been interviewing about our local community, our market, it's like these people are normal people, everyday humans that just are like, hey, I probably should meet some more people. I should probably invest in my business or invest in my, community to ensure that I can do more business. So it's not like it's rocket science or anything like that. It's just taking the steps that are uncomfortable.
Yeah. And honestly, when you meet people, I think it helps you sort of break that, right? It's like, if if I can do it, you can do it. Like really, truly, like everybody that I ever know will be like, I'm nothing special. And it really is like, they're special and unique in a lot of ways, but really, truly everybody is. So, you can do it. Or if I can do it, you can do it.
Yeah. Just go and meet one person.
You can do it. I can do it.
Meet one. Yeah. And then the next month you meet another person and you'll see that person that you already met. So you'll already have somebody to sit by.
Exactly. Yes. Yes. So really, truly, if you show up, don't talk to anybody at any of the groups, you can get a little bit of education and nobody will even know you were there. So you could be like, you just ghost and you'll be cool. That's good.
Well, thankfully, I don't know. I've enjoyed the the meetups that you've put on that I've gone to because somebody in that group will come to you. Either one of the people that run the group completely will come and introduce themselves, or other people know when you feel awkward. Like I try to see like if somebody gets kind of off to the side and I try to introduce myself because I feel because I've always felt weird doing that too. I really don't like doing that, but it makes it easier when you just do it and then you meet one person and you have at least one good conversation. So this is awesome. I really, really enjoyed you taking the time to do this.
Oh my God. So we could chat for hours. So thank you for the opportunity. It's been super fun.
Yeah, of course. Thanks so much. And till next week. Bye, everybody.